The woman stumbled into Redemption Creek, Arizona Territory, on a blistering July afternoon in 1882. Her dress torn at the hem, and her dark hair matted with dust from 3 days of walking through unforgiving desert terrain. She had nothing but the clothes on her back, a small leather pouch containing $7.32, and a past that followed her like a shadow she could not shake no matter how far she traveled. The town itself was not much to look at, just another collection of weathered buildings clinging to existence in a landscape that seemed determined to reclaim everything man tried to build. A saloon stood on one corner, its faded sign creaking in the hot wind. Across the dirt street, a general store promised supplies, and further down, a livery stable exhaled the familiar scent of horses and hay. She had passed through a dozen towns just like this one in the past 6 months, always moving, always running, always hoping the next place would be far enough away that her name would mean nothing. Her throat burned with thirst as she made her way toward a water trough outside the livery. She did not care that it was meant for animals. Water was water, and she had learned not to be particular about such things. As she bent to cup her hands in the lukewarm liquid, a voice stopped her. "Hold on there, miss. That water's been sitting in the sun for 2 days and probably has more than a few mosquito larvae swimming in it." She looked up to find a man standing in the doorway of the livery, tall and lean with sun-bronzed skin and eyes the color of spring grass. He wore dusty denim trousers, scuffed leather boots, and a chambray shirt with the sleeves rolled up to reveal strong forearms. A worn Stetson hat shaded his face, but she could see the concern etched in his features. He could not have been more than 25 or 26 years old, and there was something in his expression that was neither pity nor judgment, just simple human kindness. "I have had worse," she said, her voice hoarse and cracking. "I do not doubt it, but there is no need for worse when better is available." He disappeared into the stable and returned a moment later with a metal cup and a canteen. He poured fresh water into the cup and held it out to her. "Here, it is clean and it is cold. I just filled it from the well this morning." She hesitated, searching his face for ulterior motives, for the catch that always seemed to come with kindness. But his expression remained open and genuine. She took the cup with trembling hands and drank deeply, the cool water soothing her parched throat. She had not realized how thirsty she truly was until that moment. "Thank you," she managed between gulps. "You look like you have been traveling a while," he said, leaning against the doorframe with his arms crossed loosely over his chest. "Where are you headed?" "Anywhere that is not where I have been," she replied, finishing the water and handing the cup back to him. He refilled it without comment, and she accepted it gratefully. This time she drank more slowly, letting herself savor it. When she was finished, she wiped her mouth with the back of her hand and met his gaze directly. "I am looking for work," she said. "Anything honest. I can cook, clean, mend clothes, tend animals. I am a hard worker." "I believe you," he said, and she could tell he meant it. "My name is James Sullivan, but most folks just call me Sully. I run this livery stable and I do some ranching on a small spread just outside of town. It is not much, but it is mine." "It is more than some people have," she said quietly. "What is your name?" he asked. The question hit her like a physical blow, and she felt her entire body tense. This was always the moment she dreaded, the moment when she had to decide how much truth to tell. She had used false names before, had created entire fictional histories to escape the weight of her real one. But something about this man, about his honest green eyes and his simple act of kindness, made her want to tell the truth, or at least part of it. "Rose," she said. "My name is Rose." "Rose," he repeated, as if testing how it sounded. "That is a pretty name. What about your family name?" There it was, the question she had been dreading. She looked away, focusing on the distant mountains that shimmered in the afternoon heat. Her jaw tightened, and she could feel the familiar shame rising in her chest like bile. "I do not use my family name," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "It carries only shame. I would rather have no name at all than carry that burden." Sully was quiet for a long moment, and when she finally worked up the courage to look at him again, his expression had softened even further. There was no judgment there, no curiosity about what terrible thing her family had done. Instead, there was only understanding and something else she could not quite identify. "Then take mine and start fresh," he said simply. She stared at him, certain she had misheard. "What? Take my name," he repeated. "Sullivan. If your own name brings you nothing but pain, then leave it behind and start over. You can be Rose Sullivan, and whatever happened before does not have to define who you are now." "You do not even know me," she said, her voice shaking. "You do not know what I have done, what my family has done." "I know you are standing here asking for honest work," he said. "I know you have been traveling alone through dangerous country, which means you are both brave and desperate. I know you are proud enough to not want charity but humble enough to accept help when it is offered. That tells me more about your character than any family name ever could." Tears stung her eyes, but she blinked them back furiously. She had not cried in months, had promised herself she would not waste tears on things she could not change. But this unexpected kindness from a stranger was almost more than she could bear. "I cannot just take your name," she said. "That is not how things work." "It is if we make it work," he replied with a small smile. "Look, I am not suggesting anything improper. What I am saying is that if you need a fresh start, I can help provide it. You said you are looking for work. I could use help around the stable and the ranch. The pay would not be much, but it would include room and board. There is a small cabin on my property that is currently empty. You could stay there. And if you want to go by Rose Sullivan to avoid questions about your past, I will back up whatever story you want to tell." "Why would you do this for me?" she asked, searching his face for any hint of deception. He was quiet for a moment, seeming to consider his answer carefully. "About 5 years ago, I found myself in a situation not too different from yours. I had made some mistakes, got mixed up with the wrong people, and needed to get away and start over. A man I had never met before gave me a chance when no one else would. He offered me work, taught me everything he knew about horses and ranching, and never once asked me about my past. When he died last year, he left me his stable and his land. I figure the best way to honor his memory is to pass that kindness forward." Rose felt something shift inside her chest, a loosening of the tight knot of fear and shame that had been her constant companion for so long. She wanted to believe him, wanted to accept this offer of a new beginning. But years of disappointment and betrayal had taught her to be cautious. "What if I am a terrible person?" she asked. "What if I have done things you would not be able to forgive? Have you killed anyone who did not deserve it?" he asked bluntly. "No," she said quickly. "Have you hurt children or innocent people for your own gain?" "Never," she said, her voice firm. "Then whatever else you have done or whatever your family has done, I reckon you deserve a second chance," he said. "We all do." She looked at him for a long moment, studying the lines of his face, the calluses on his hands, the dust on his clothes that spoke of hard work and honest labor. There was something fundamentally decent about James Sullivan, something that made her want to trust him despite every instinct that told her to keep running. "All right," she said finally. "I will accept your offer, but I will earn my keep. I will not take charity." "I would not offer it any other way," he said, extending his hand. "Welcome to Redemption Creek, Rose Sullivan." She took his hand, feeling the rough warmth of his palm against hers, and for the first time in months, she allowed herself to hope that maybe, just maybe, she had finally found a place where she could stop running. The cabin Sully showed her an hour later was small but sturdy, built from rough-hewn logs with a stone fireplace and a single window that looked out over a valley dotted with mesquite and sagebrush. It had a narrow bed with a straw mattress, a small table with 2 chairs, a trunk for storage, and little else. To Rose, it looked like paradise. "I know it is not much," Sully said, standing in the doorway with his hat in his hands. "But the roof does not leak and the fireplace draws well." There are blankets in the trunk, and I will bring over some supplies from town tomorrow. Flour, salt, coffee, that sort of thing." "It is perfect," Rose said, running her hand along the rough surface of the table. "Thank you." "The well is just outside, and there is a small garden plot around back that has been neglected for a while. You are welcome to use it if you want." "My ranch house is about a quarter-mile that way," he pointed north, "and the stable is back in town. I spend most of my time between the two, but I am usually at the stable during the day if you need anything." "What would you like me to do first?" she asked, already mentally cataloging all the ways she could make herself useful. "First, I would like you to rest," he said firmly. "You look like you have not slept properly in days. Tomorrow will be soon enough to start work. There is a bolt on the inside of the door, and no one will bother you out here. This land is mine, and everyone in town knows it." Rose nodded, suddenly feeling the full weight of her exhaustion. Now that she had stopped moving, her body was reminding her of every mile she had walked, every night she had slept on hard ground, every meal she had skipped to make her meager funds last longer. "Sully," she said as he turned to leave, "why is this town called Redemption Creek?" He paused in the doorway, a slight smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "There is a creek about a mile from here that runs year-round, even in the dry season. When the first settlers came through, they were nearly dead from thirst. That creek saved their lives. They figured if water could redeem them from death, maybe this place could offer other kinds of redemption too. It is a bit optimistic for a dusty Arizona town, but I like the sentiment." "So do I," Rose said softly. After he left, she bolted the door and sank down onto the bed, not even bothering to remove her boots. She was asleep within minutes, and for the first time in months, she did not dream of running. She woke the next morning to birdsong and sunlight streaming through the window. For a disoriented moment, she did not know where she was, and panic seized her chest. Then memory returned along with the realization that she was safe, at least for now. She sat up slowly, her body aching from days of hard travel, and looked around the cabin with fresh eyes. In the morning light, she could see details she had missed the night before. Someone had carved a simple pattern of flowers into the mantel above the fireplace. A shelf on the wall held a few battered tin plates and cups. The floor, though dusty, was made of smooth planks rather than packed dirt. It was clear that whoever had built this cabin had taken pride in their work. Rose stood and went to the window, looking out at the landscape. The valley stretched before her, golden in the early morning light, with the dark shapes of cattle visible in the distance. It was beautiful in a harsh, unforgiving way, and she found herself breathing easier than she had in months. A knock at the door made her jump. She crossed the room cautiously and called out, "Who is it?" "It is Sully," came the familiar voice. "I brought some supplies." She unbolted the door and opened it to find him standing there with a wooden crate in his arms. He looked freshly washed, his dark hair still damp, and he smelled of soap and leather. "Good morning," he said cheerfully. "I hope I did not wake you." "I was already awake," she assured him, stepping back to let him enter. He set the crate on the table, and she saw it was filled with provisions. Flour, cornmeal, salt, sugar, coffee, dried beans, a few tins of preserved peaches, and even a small jar of honey. "This is too much," she protested. "It is what you will need to cook for yourself," he said practically. "Unless you plan to come up to the ranch house for meals, which you are welcome to do, but I figured you might want your privacy." "I do," she admitted. "Thank you for understanding that." "There is also this," he said, reaching into his pocket and pulling out a small leather purse. "It is an advance on your wages. I figured you might need a few personal items from the general store." Rose looked at the purse but did not take it. "I told you I would not take charity." "And I told you this is an advance on wages, not charity," he said patiently. "You will work it off soon enough. There is plenty to do around here." Reluctantly, she accepted the purse, feeling the weight of coins inside. It was more money than she had held in months. "What would you like me to do today?" she asked. "Can you ride a horse?" he asked. "Yes," she said. "My father had horses." She stopped abruptly, not wanting to say more about her father or her family. If Sully noticed her sudden silence, he did not comment on it. Good. Then I thought you could help me check on the cattle today. I have about 50 heads spread out over the valley, and I need to make sure they all have access to water and that none of them are sick or injured. It is mostly just riding around and looking, but it needs to be done regularly. I can do that, she said, grateful for a task that would keep her busy and outdoors. Meet me at the stable in an hour, he said. And Rose, you might want to stop by the general store first. Mrs. Henderson, who runs the place, keeps a selection of women's clothing. You will want something more practical for ranch work than what you are wearing now. Rose looked down at her dress, which had once been a respectable dark blue cotton but was now stained and torn from travel. He was right, of course. She would need something more suitable. I will do that, she said. Thank you. The general store was doing brisk business when Rose entered, the bell above the door chiming to announce her arrival. Several women were examining bolts of fabric near the back, and a few men were discussing the price of ammunition near the front counter. All conversation stopped when Rose walked in, and she felt the weight of their curious stares. A plump woman with graying hair and a kind face emerged from behind the counter, wiping her hands on her apron. You must be the young woman Sully mentioned, she said warmly. He stopped by earlier this morning and said you would be coming in. I am Margaret Henderson. Welcome to Redemption Creek. Thank you, Rose said, acutely aware that everyone in the store was still watching her. You are looking for some practical clothing for ranch work, I understand, Mrs. Henderson continued, seemingly oblivious to the stares or perhaps just choosing to ignore them. I have just the thing. Come with me. She led Rose to a corner of the store where several ready-made garments hung on hooks. There were simple cotton dresses, sturdy skirts, and even a few pairs of denim trousers. Most ladies around here prefer split riding skirts for ranch work, Mrs. Henderson said, pulling down a dark brown skirt that appeared to be divided like trousers. They are practical and modest. I also recommend a few sturdy blouses and a good wide-brimmed hat to keep the sun off your face. Rose selected 2 split riding skirts, 3 cotton blouses, a pair of work gloves, and a hat. Mrs. Henderson also insisted she take some undergarments, stockings, and a nightgown. A lady needs proper underclothes, she said firmly. And you will want something comfortable to sleep in. These Arizona nights can get cold, even in summer. When everything was tallied up, Rose was relieved to find she had enough in her advance to cover it all with a bit left over. As Mrs. Henderson wrapped her purchases in brown paper and string, she leaned in close and spoke quietly. I do not know what brought you to Redemption Creek, dear, and I will not ask. But I want you to know that this is a good town full of good people. We take care of our own here. If anyone gives you trouble, you come to me or to Sheriff Dalton. We do not hold with gossip or cruelty. Rose felt her throat tighten with emotion. Thank you, Mrs. Henderson. That means more than you know. Sully is a good man, Mrs. Henderson added. One of the best I have known. He would not have brought you here if he did not believe in you. That is good enough for me. Rose changed into one of her new outfits in the small room at the back of the store that Mrs. Henderson offered. The split riding skirt felt strange at first, but she could immediately see the practicality of it. Paired with a simple white blouse and her new hat, she felt more prepared to face the work ahead. When she arrived at the stable, Sully was saddling 2 horses, a large bay gelding and a smaller paint mare. He looked up as she approached and nodded approvingly. Much better, he said. That dress you were wearing yesterday looked like it was about to fall apart. It nearly was, Rose admitted. This is Dakota, he said, patting the bay. He is mine, and this is Clementine. She is gentle and sure-footed, perfect for checking fence lines and herding cattle. Rose approached the mare slowly, letting the horse sniff her hand before stroking her neck. Hello, Clementine, she murmured. We are going to be friends, you and I. The mare nickered softly, and Rose felt a rush of affection for the animal. It had been too long since she had been around horses, since she had felt that connection with another living creature. You do know horses, Sully observed, watching the easy way she handled Clementine. My father bred and trained them, Rose said before she could stop herself. Then, realizing she had opened a door she usually kept firmly closed, she added quickly, before everything went wrong. Sully handed her the reins but did not press for details. Ready to ride? He asked. More than ready, she said, mounting smoothly. They rode out into the valley, and Rose felt something inside her begin to unclench. The rhythm of the horse beneath her, the vast expanse of sky above, the clean desert air filling her lungs, all of it combined to create a sense of freedom she had not felt in a very long time. Sully was a patient teacher, showing her the boundaries of his property, pointing out landmarks she could use to orient herself, and explaining how he managed his small herd. His cattle were a mixed bunch, mostly longhorns with a few Herefords mixed in, hardy animals well suited to the harsh climate. I am not trying to build an empire, he explained as they watched a group of cattle drinking from the creek that gave the town its name. I just want a sustainable operation that provides a decent living. Some of the big ranchers around here have thousands of head, but that is not for me. I like being able to know my animals individually, to notice if something is wrong before it becomes a big problem. That is a good philosophy, Rose said. My father always said that quality mattered more than quantity. Your father sounds like he was a wise man, Sully said carefully. Rose was quiet for a moment, watching the sunlight dance on the water. He was, she said finally. Once. Before the gambling debts and the drinking. Before he sold everything we had, including his integrity. The words came out before she could stop them, and she immediately regretted her honesty. But when she glanced at Sully, his expression was sympathetic rather than judgmental. Addiction can destroy even the best people, he said quietly. It is not your fault. Everyone in our town thought it was, Rose said bitterly. They thought I must have known what he was doing, must have been complicit in his schemes. When he finally skipped town one night, leaving debts he could never repay, people came after me demanding money I did not have. They said I should have stopped him, should have turned him in, as if I had not tried 100 times to get him to change. So you ran, Sully said. What choice did I have? Rose asked, her voice cracking. I could not pay his debts, I could barely feed myself, and everywhere I went in that town people looked at me with disgust or pity, sometimes both. My family name became synonymous with shame and dishonesty. I had to get away. Sully was quiet for a long moment, just sitting on his horse and watching the cattle. Finally, he said, You know, when I told you yesterday to take my name and start fresh, I meant it. But I realize now that I did not fully understand what I was offering. It is not just about giving you a different last name to use. It is about giving you the chance to build a new reputation, to be known for who you are rather than who your father was. Why would you do that for me? Rose asked, echoing her question from the day before. Because everyone deserves a chance to be judged on their own merits, he said simply. And because I know what it is like to carry shame that is not entirely your own. Rose wanted to ask him what he meant, wanted to know more about his past and the mistakes he had mentioned. But she understood that privacy was a gift they were giving each other, the freedom to share only what they were ready to share. Thank you, she said instead, for understanding, for not asking for details I am not ready to give. We all have our stories, Sully said. You will tell me yours when you are ready, or you will not tell me at all. Either way is fine. They spent the rest of the day riding the range, checking on cattle, and working to repair a section of fence that had been damaged by weather. Rose threw herself into the work with determination, grateful for the physical labor that kept her hands busy and her mind occupied. By the time they rode back to the stable as the sun was setting, she was exhausted but satisfied. You did good work today, Sully said as they unsaddled the horses. If you are willing, I would like you to help me with the cattle again tomorrow. And then later in the week, there is work to be done at the stable. I have several horses that need training and I could use an extra pair of hands. I will be here, Rose promised. Over the next few weeks, Rose settled into a routine that felt almost normal. She woke early each morning, made coffee and a simple breakfast in her cabin, and then met Sully either at the stable or at the ranch house to discuss the day's work. Some days they rode out to check on cattle. Other days she helped him train horses, feed and groom the animals boarded at the stable, or repair equipment and buildings that were always in need of maintenance. The work was hard and often dirty, but Rose found she did not mind. There was something deeply satisfying about falling into bed each night genuinely tired from physical labor rather than exhausted from running and hiding. Her hands developed calluses, her skin tanned despite the wide-brimmed hat she always wore, and her body grew stronger. The people of Redemption Creek gradually accepted her presence. Mrs. Henderson always greeted her warmly when she stopped by the general store. The owner of the cafe, a jovial man named Tom Chen whose parents had immigrated from China to work on the railroads, often saved her a slice of pie when she came in for supplies. Even Sheriff Dalton, a weathered man in his 50s with sharp eyes that missed nothing, gave her a respectful nod when he saw her on the street. No one asked questions about her past. She was known simply as Rose Sullivan, the woman who worked for Sully on his ranch, and that was enough. But while Rose was finding her place in the community, she was also becoming increasingly aware of her feelings for Sully himself. It was impossible not to admire him as she worked beside him day after day. He was patient and kind, teaching her everything he knew without making her feel inadequate for not knowing it already. He was hardworking and fair, treating his animals with respect and always keeping his word. And he had a quiet sense of humor that emerged at unexpected moments, making her laugh when she had almost forgotten how. She tried to keep her feelings in check, reminding herself that he had offered her a job and a fresh start, nothing more. The last thing she wanted was to ruin this new life by developing inappropriate feelings for her employer. But it was becoming harder to ignore the way her heart sped up when he smiled at her, or the warmth that flooded through her when their hands accidentally touched while working. About a month after her arrival, an incident occurred that changed everything between them. They were working in the stable on a hot afternoon, moving hay bales to make room for a new shipment that was arriving the next day. Rose was up in the loft, passing bales down to Sully, when she lost her footing on the loose hay. She felt herself falling, saw the ground rushing up toward her and braced for impact. Instead, she found herself caught in strong arms, her fall broken by Sully's quick reflexes. He had dropped the bale he was holding and lunged forward just in time to catch her. For a moment, they both stood frozen, Rose cradled against his chest, his arms wrapped securely around her. "Are you all right?" he asked, his voice rough with concern. "I think so," she managed, though her heart was racing, and not just from the fall. She looked up and found his face just inches from hers. His green eyes were dark with worry, and she could feel the rapid beating of his heart where her hand rested against his chest. The moment stretched out, charged with something that had been building between them for weeks. "Rose," he said softly, and the way he said her name made her breath catch. "Yes," she whispered. "I need to tell you something," he said, still holding her close. "I have been trying not to say anything because I did not want to make you uncomfortable or make you feel obligated in any way. But I cannot keep pretending that working with you every day, seeing your smile, hearing your laugh, is not affecting me. I am falling in love with you, Rose. I think I have been since the day you walked into town." Rose felt tears spring to her eyes. "Sully, I do not know what to say." "You do not have to say anything," he said quickly. "I am not expecting anything in return, I just needed you to know. If you want to pretend I never said anything and just continue as we have been, I can do that. I will not let this change our working relationship or your position here. You are safe no matter what." "That is not what I meant," Rose said, reaching up to touch his face. "I meant I do not know what to say because I have been trying so hard not to fall in love with you and I have failed miserably. I love you too, Sully. I think I have since you offered me water that first day, since you told me I could take your name and start fresh. No one has ever shown me that kind of kindness. The smile that spread across his face was like sunrise breaking over the desert. Really? He asked, as if he could not quite believe it. Really, she confirmed. He set her down gently, but he did not let go of her. Instead, he cupped her face in his hands, his thumbs brushing away the tears that had started to fall. May I kiss you? He asked. Please, she whispered. His lips met hers in a kiss that was gentle and sweet and full of promise. Rose felt something inside her that had been broken for a long time begin to heal. When they finally pulled apart, both of them were smiling. I have wanted to do that for weeks, Sully admitted. So have I, Rose said. They stood there in the stable, holding each other, as dust motes danced in the afternoon sunlight and the horses shifted peacefully in their stalls. Rose felt a sense of rightness settle over her, a feeling that she was exactly where she was supposed to be. What happens now? She asked. Now we take things one day at a time, Sully said. I am not going anywhere, and I hope you are not either. We will figure out the rest as we go. I like the sound of that, Rose said, but their peaceful moment was interrupted by the sound of horses approaching rapidly. Sully released her and moved to the stable door, his expression suddenly alert. Rose followed, and together they watched as 3 men rode into town at a gallop, their horses lathered with sweat. That is strange, Sully muttered. Those are Jackson's men from the big ranch up north. They look like they have been riding hard. One of the men dismounted and ran toward Sheriff Dalton's office. Sully and Rose exchanged a worried glance before heading out to see what was happening. By the time they reached the sheriff's office, a small crowd had gathered. What is going on? Sully asked Tom Chen, who was standing near the door. Cattle rustlers, Tom said grimly. They hit Jackson's ranch last night, made off with at least 100 head, killed 2 of his ranch hands who tried to stop them. Rose felt her blood run cold. Cattle rustling was a serious crime in ranching country, often punished with hanging if the rustlers were caught. And the fact that they had killed men in the process made it even worse. Sheriff Dalton emerged from his office, his face set in hard lines. I need volunteers to form a posse, he announced. These men are dangerous, and they cannot be allowed to get away with murder. If they hit Jackson's ranch, they might hit others. We need to stop them before anyone else gets hurt. Several men immediately stepped forward, including Sully. Rose grabbed his arm, fear suddenly flooding through her. You do not have to do this, she said urgently. Let the sheriff handle it. I am a rancher, Rose, Sully said gently. This is my responsibility too. If rustlers are operating in this area, my cattle could be next. And more than that, 2 men died last night. That cannot go unanswered. But what if something happens to you? Rose asked, hating the fear in her voice. He pulled her aside, away from the crowd. I will be careful, he promised, and I will come back to you. We just found each other, Rose. I am not going to throw that away by being reckless. You promise, she demanded. I promise, he said firmly. He kissed her forehead gently. Keep an eye on the ranch and the stable while I am gone. I trust you to handle things. I will, Rose said, trying to push down her terror. Just please be safe. I will do my best, he said. The posse rode out within the hour, 12 men armed and determined. Rose stood outside the stable and watched them go, her heart in her throat. She had just admitted her love for Sully, had just allowed herself to hope for a future, and now he was riding off into danger. That night, alone in her cabin, Rose found it impossible to sleep. She kept imagining all the terrible things that could happen, kept seeing Sully injured or worse. She had already lost so much in her life. The thought of losing him too was almost unbearable. The next day, she threw herself into work with desperate intensity, trying to keep her mind occupied. She fed and groomed all the horses at the stable, checked on the cattle, repaired a broken gate, and cleaned tack until her hands were raw. Mrs. Henderson stopped by in the afternoon with a basket of food. You need to eat, she said firmly, and you need to rest. Wearing yourself out will not bring him back any faster. I just need to stay busy, Rose said. I understand, Mrs. Henderson said kindly. My husband rode with a posse once years ago. It was the longest 3 days of my life, but he came back safe, and so will Sully. That man is too stubborn and too much in love to let anything happen to him. Rose looked at her in surprise. How did you know, dear child? Everyone in town has seen the way you two look at each other, Mrs. Henderson said with a smile. It is about time you both admitted it. Despite her worry, Rose found herself smiling. Is it that obvious? Only to anyone with eyes, Mrs. Henderson said. Now eat something before you waste away. The posse returned 3 days later, riding into town at dusk. Rose was at the stable when she heard the horses approaching, and she ran out into the street, her heart pounding. She scanned the riders frantically, and relief flooded through her when she spotted Sully among them, dusty and tired but unharmed. He dismounted and handed Dakota's reins to one of the other men before striding toward her. Rose met him halfway, not caring who saw as she threw her arms around him. You are all right, she said, her voice muffled against his chest. I told you I would be, he said, holding her tight. We caught the rustlers and recovered most of the cattle. They are on their way to Tucson to stand trial. And you are not hurt, she asked, pulling back to look at him. Not even a scratch, he assured her, though I am exhausted and probably smell like a horse. I do not care, Rose said fiercely. I am just glad you are back. He cupped her face in his hands and kissed her long and deep, right there in the middle of the street. Rose heard a few whistles and cheers from the other men, but she did not care. All that mattered was that Sully was safe and in her arms. When they finally pulled apart, Sully was grinning. I missed you, he said. I missed you too, Rose said. Do not ever scare me like that again. I will do my best not to, he promised. But right now I need food, a bath, and about 12 hours of sleep. Come on, Rose said, taking his hand. I will heat water for a bath while you eat. You can use the tub in my cabin. They walked together through the gathering darkness, hand in hand, and Rose felt a deep sense of contentment. This was what happiness felt like, she realized. Not the absence of fear or difficulty, but the presence of someone you loved, someone who made the fears and difficulties bearable. Over the next few months, Rose and Sully's relationship deepened and grew. They worked together during the day, and in the evenings, they would sit together on the porch of Rose's cabin, watching the sun set over the valley and talking about everything and nothing. Sully told her more about his past, about how he had gotten involved with a group of cattle thieves when he was younger, not knowing at first what they were doing. When he found out, he had tried to leave, but they had threatened him. It was only through the intervention of the man who had later given him the stable that he had been able to break free and start over. I understand guilt, he said one evening. I understand carrying the weight of past mistakes, even if those mistakes were not entirely your fault. That is why I recognized something of myself in you that first day. Rose, in turn, told him more about her father, about the good man he had been before addiction took hold, and about the mother she had lost to fever when she was 14. She told him about the humiliation of having creditors come to their door, about the shame of watching her father sell their family horse one by one to pay gambling debts, about the final betrayal when he disappeared in the night without even saying goodbye. I was so angry at him, she admitted. I still am sometimes, but I also miss him, and I hate that I miss him after what he did. Love does not stop just because someone hurts you, Sully said gently. You can be angry and hurt and still love him. Those feelings do not have to be mutually exclusive. His understanding and acceptance helped Rose begin to heal from wounds she had been carrying for years, and as she healed, she found herself falling more deeply in love with him. He was everything she had not known she needed: steady, reliable, honest, and kind. As summer turned to fall and the desert heat gave way to cooler temperatures, Sully began talking about the future in a way that made Rose's heart race. I have been thinking, he said one evening as they sat together watching the stars come out. This cabin you are living in is too small. And it does not make sense for us to be living in separate places when we spend all our time together anyway. Rose's breath caught. What are you suggesting? I am suggesting that maybe it is time to make our arrangement more permanent, he said, turning to face her. Rose Sullivan, I know that is not legally your name yet, but it could be, if you will marry me. Rose stared at him, her mind racing. Marriage, she had not let herself even think about it, had not dared to hope that this man who had already given her so much would want to give her even more. You want to marry me? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. More than anything, he said. I love you, Rose. I want to build a life with you, a real life. I want to wake up next to you every morning and fall asleep beside you every night. I want to expand the ranch, maybe build a bigger house for us to raise a family in someday if that is something you want. I want to grow old with you, but only if that is what you want too. Tears were streaming down Rose's face, but for once, they were tears of joy rather than pain. Yes, she said. Yes, I will marry you. I love you so much, Sully. He pulled a small box from his pocket and opened it to reveal a simple gold band with a small turquoise stone. It is not much, he said, but turquoise is mined here in Arizona and I thought it was fitting. A stone from the place where we found each other. It is perfect, Rose said as he slipped it onto her finger. Everything about this is perfect. They were married a month later in a simple ceremony at the church in Redemption Creek. Mrs. Henderson insisted on making Rose a wedding dress, a simple but elegant gown of cream-colored silk that made Rose feel beautiful for the first time in years. Tom Chen provided the wedding cake, a magnificent creation with 3 tiers. And half the town turned out to witness the ceremony and celebrate afterward. As Rose stood beside Sully and spoke her vows, promising to love and honor him for the rest of her life, she felt a sense of overwhelming gratitude. She thought about the broken, desperate woman who had stumbled into town 6 months earlier, carrying nothing but shame and fear. And now here she was, surrounded by friends, marrying a good man who loved her, starting a new life with a new name that she had truly earned. When the preacher pronounced them husband and wife, Sully kissed her to cheers and applause. Rose kissed him back, pouring all her love and gratitude into that kiss. At the reception, Sheriff Dalton raised his glass in a toast. To Sully and Rose, he said, "May your marriage be as strong as the Arizona sun and as enduring as these desert mountains. And may you always remember that in Redemption Creek, everyone gets a second chance." To second chances, the crowd echoed, raising their glasses. Rose and Sully danced their first dance as husband and wife to music played by a local fiddle player. As they swayed together, Rose rested her head on Sully's shoulder and allowed herself to feel completely, perfectly happy. "What are you thinking about?" Sully asked softly. "I am thinking about how lucky I am," Rose said. 6 months ago I had nothing and no one, now I have everything." "We have everything," Sully corrected gently. "I am just as lucky as you are, Rose Sullivan. Do not ever forget that." "I will not," she promised. They spent their wedding night in the ranch house, which Sully had cleaned and decorated for the occasion. He had filled the bedroom with wildflowers and lit candles everywhere, creating a warm, romantic atmosphere. They made love for the first time that night, and Rose discovered a whole new dimension of intimacy and connection that she had never experienced before. Afterward, lying in Sully's arms in the darkness, Rose felt a sense of completion she had not known was possible. This was what it meant to be truly known and truly loved, to be accepted completely for who you were, past and all. "I love you," she whispered. "I love you too," Sully replied, kissing the top of her head. "Always." Over the next 2 years, Rose and Sully built a life together that exceeded Rose's wildest dreams. They expanded the ranch, increasing their herd and building a larger, more comfortable house with a real kitchen, multiple bedrooms, and even a parlor for entertaining guests. Rose discovered she had a talent for breeding horses, and she began a small operation focused on producing quality animals known for their intelligence and temperament. Word spread, and soon people were coming from miles around to buy horses trained by Rose Sullivan. The name that had once carried only shame now carried respect and admiration. Rose Sullivan was known as a skilled horsewoman, a hard worker, and a fair dealer. She had built her own reputation, one that had nothing to do with her father's failures and everything to do with her own abilities and character. She also became more involved in the community. She helped Mrs. Henderson at the general store during busy times, taught several young girls in town how to ride, and worked with Sully to donate beef to families who were struggling. The people of Redemption Creek had given her a second chance, and she wanted to give back. But perhaps the greatest joy of those 2 years was watching her relationship with Sully deepen and mature. They had started with attraction and grown into love, but now they were building true partnership. They made decisions together, supported each other through difficulties, celebrated each other's successes, and learned to navigate the inevitable disagreements that arose. Rose learned that Sully had a stubborn streak that emerged when he was tired, and he learned that Rose became quiet and withdrawn when she was overwhelmed. They learned to recognize these patterns in each other and to respond with patience and understanding rather than frustration. In the spring of 1884, Rose discovered she was pregnant. She told Sully one evening as they sat on the porch of their new house, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink. "I have something to tell you," she said, taking his hand. "What is it?" he asked, turning to look at her. "We are going to have a baby," Rose said, watching his face carefully. For a moment, Sully just stared at her as if he could not quite process what she had said. Then a smile broke across his face, brilliant and joyful. "Really, we are going to be parents." "We are," Rose confirmed, laughing at his excitement. He pulled her into his arms, holding her carefully as if she might break. "This is the best news," he said. "Rose, we are going to have a baby, our baby." "Are you happy?" Rose asked, even though his reaction made the answer obvious. "I am beyond happy," Sully said. "I am ecstatic, terrified but ecstatic." "I am terrified too," Rose admitted. "What if I am not a good mother? What if I repeat my father's mistakes?" "You will not," Sully said firmly. "You are nothing like your father, Rose. You are strong and responsible and loving. You are going to be an amazing mother." "How can you be so sure?" Rose asked. "Because I know you," Sully said simply. "I have watched you with animals, with the young girls you teach, with everyone in this town. You are patient and kind and fair. Our child is going to be so lucky to have you as a mother." Rose felt tears prick her eyes. "And they will be lucky to have you as a father." The pregnancy was not easy. Rose suffered from severe nausea in the early months and spent most of her time feeling exhausted and miserable. But Sully was attentive and caring, taking over many of her usual chores and making sure she rested. Mrs. Henderson appointed herself Rose's unofficial advisor, stopping by regularly with food, advice, and reassurance. "Every pregnancy is different," she told Rose when she complained about the nausea. "But this will pass, and it will all be worth it when you hold your baby for the first time." As Rose's belly grew, she found herself thinking often about her mother, wishing desperately that she were alive to share this experience. She had so many questions, so many fears, and she missed having a mother to turn to. One day, she mentioned this to Mrs. Henderson, who had stopped by with a basket of muffins. "I wish my mother was here," Rose said, her voice thick with emotion. "She should be here to help me prepare, to tell me what to expect, to meet her grandchild." Mrs. Henderson set down the basket and took Rose's hands in hers. "Your mother cannot be here, dear, and I know that leaves a hole in your heart, but you are not alone. You have me, and I would be honored to stand in as a mother figure if you will let me. I never had daughters of my own, only sons who moved away. It would mean a great deal to me to help you through this." Rose felt overwhelming gratitude. "I would like that very much," she said, pulling Mrs. Henderson into a hug. "Good," Mrs. Henderson said briskly, pulling back and wiping her eyes. "Now, let me tell you what you need to know about childbirth. It is not going to be easy, but you are strong and you will get through it. In December of 1884, on a cold winter night when frost covered the ground and stars filled the clear desert sky, Rose went into labor. Sully rode into town to fetch the midwife, a capable woman named Mrs. Ortiz who had delivered half the babies in Redemption Creek. Mrs. Henderson arrived shortly after, taking charge of the situation with calm efficiency. She boiled water, prepared clean linens, and sat with Rose through the long hours of labor, holding her hand and offering encouragement. "You are doing wonderfully," she said over and over. "Just breathe through it. Your body knows what to do." The labor lasted through the night and into the early morning hours. Rose had never known pain like this, had never felt so utterly consumed by physical sensation. But every time she felt like she could not go on, she thought about Sully waiting anxiously in the other room, about the baby she was about to meet, and she found the strength to continue. Finally, as dawn light began to filter through the windows, she heard Mrs. Ortiz say, "One more push, Rose." Just one more. Rose gathered every ounce of strength she had left and pushed. A moment later, she heard the most beautiful sound in the world, the cry of her newborn baby. "It is a boy," Mrs. Ortiz announced, holding up the squirming, wailing infant. "A healthy, strong boy." Rose started to cry as Mrs. Ortiz placed the baby on her chest. He was perfect, with a wispy covering of dark hair and tiny fists that waved in the air as he cried. She touched his soft cheek in wonder, unable to believe that this perfect little person was hers. "Hello, sweetheart," she whispered. "I am your mama. I have been waiting so long to meet you." The baby's cries quieted at the sound of her voice, and his eyes, dark blue and unfocused, seemed to look in her direction. "Can I bring Sully in?" Mrs. Henderson asked, beaming with pride as if she had delivered the baby herself. "Yes, please," Rose said, unable to tear her eyes away from her son. Sully burst into the room moments later, his face pale with worry and exhaustion. But when he saw Rose holding their baby, his expression transformed into pure joy. "Is he all right? Are you all right?" he asked, coming to kneel beside the bed. "We are both fine," Rose assured him. "Come meet your son." Sully reached out with a trembling hand to touch the baby's head. "He is so small," he whispered in awe. "He is perfect," Rose said. "Just like his mother," Sully said, leaning in to kiss her forehead. "Thank you, Rose. Thank you for this gift." They named him William James Sullivan after Sully's father and Sully himself, but they called him Will from the start. He was a good baby, alert and curious about the world around him. As the days turned into weeks, and then months, Rose discovered that motherhood was both harder and more rewarding than she had ever imagined. There were sleepless nights when Will cried inconsolably, days when Rose was so tired she could barely function, moments of doubt when she worried she was doing everything wrong. But there were also moments of incredible joy. Will's first smile, the way he lit up when he saw her face, the sweet weight of him in her arms as he nursed, the sound of Sully singing lullabies in his deep, slightly off-key voice. Watching Sully with their son was perhaps the greatest joy of all. He was a natural father, patient and loving, endlessly fascinated by every little thing Will did. He would spend hours just holding the baby, talking to him about the ranch, the horses, and the future they would build together. "You are going to love it here," Sully would tell Will, who would stare up at his father with solemn eyes. "We have horses to ride and cattle to tend, and your mother is going to teach you everything she knows about training horses because she is the best there is. You are a lucky boy, Will. You have the best mother in the world." Rose would listen to these conversations with tears in her eyes, overwhelmed by love for both her husband and her son. This was the family she had never thought she would have, the happiness she had not believed she deserved. When Will was 6 months old, something happened that Rose had been dreading. A man came to Redemption Creek asking questions about a woman who matched Rose's description. Sheriff Dalton brought him to the ranch one afternoon, his expression grim. "Sully, Rose, this is Mr. William Thornton," the sheriff said. "He is a lawyer from New Mexico Territory and he is looking for someone. I thought you should hear what he has to say." Rose felt her blood run cold. This was it. Someone from her past had found her. All her fears came rushing back, the certainty that she could never truly escape who she had been. Thornton was a middle-aged man in a suit that looked out of place in the dusty ranch setting. He held his hat in his hands and had an apologetic expression on his face. "Mrs. Sullivan, I believe you may be the person I am looking for," he said. "I have been hired to locate the daughter of Marcus Brennan, formerly of Silver City, New Mexico. Her name was Rose Brennan." Rose felt Sully's hand find hers and squeeze tight. "Why are you looking for her?" Sully asked, his voice hard. "I have news about her father," Thornton said. "He passed away 3 months ago in Denver." Rose felt a strange mix of emotions wash over her, grief for the father she had loved despite everything, anger at the man who had abandoned her. And underneath it all, a sense of finality, as if a chapter of her life had finally closed. "How did he die?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Thornton looked surprised that she had admitted her identity so quickly. "He contracted pneumonia," he said. "Before he died, he wrote a letter and paid me to find you and deliver it, along with something else." He reached into his satchel and pulled out a sealed envelope and a small wooden box. "He said to tell you he was sorry, for what that is worth." Rose took the items with trembling hands. She opened the box first and gasped. Inside was her mother's wedding ring, a simple gold band she thought her father had sold years ago. "He never sold it," Thornton explained. "He said it was the one thing he could not bring himself to part with, no matter how desperate things got. He wanted you to have it." Rose felt tears streaming down her face as she slipped her mother's ring onto her right hand, where it sat next to the turquoise ring Sully had given her. "Thank you for bringing this to me," she managed. After Thornton left, promising to handle any legal matters related to her father's death, Rose sat on the porch steps with the unopened letter in her hands. Sully sat beside her, holding Will, who was trying to grab at everything within reach. "You want to read it?" Sully asked gently. "I do not know," Rose admitted. "Part of me wants to burn it without reading it, but part of me needs to know what he had to say." "I will support whatever you decide," Sully said. Rose took a deep breath and opened the envelope. The letter was written in her father's familiar handwriting, now shaky and uneven. "Dear Rose," it began. "I do not expect you to forgive me. I do not deserve forgiveness for what I did to you, for the burden I placed on you, for abandoning you when you needed me most. I was a coward and a fool, destroyed by weakness I did not have the strength to fight. But I need you to know that I loved you. I always loved you. You were the best thing I ever did in this life, and I ruined that like I ruined everything else. I hope you have found happiness somewhere, that you have built a life free from the shame I brought upon our name. You deserved so much better than the father I was. Your mother would have been so disappointed in me, but she would have been so proud of you. You have her strength, her goodness. I only wish I had possessed the same. I am sorry, Rose. I am so sorry. Your father, Marcus Brennan." Rose read the letter twice, tears falling on the paper and smudging the ink. When she finished, she folded it carefully and put it back in the envelope. "He was sorry," she said quietly. "It does not change anything, but he was sorry." "Do you forgive him?" Sully asked. Rose thought about that for a long moment, watching Will grab at Sully's shirt buttons with chubby fingers. "I do not know if I forgive him," she said finally, "but I think I can let go of the anger. I think I can accept that he was a flawed person who loved me but could not overcome his demons, and I think I can be grateful that, because of the path he forced me onto, I found my way here. To you, to Will, to this life." "That is a mature way to look at it," Sully said. "I have you to thank for that," Rose said, leaning her head on his shoulder. "You taught me that people can change, that past mistakes do not have to define us. You showed me that redemption is possible. That is what this town is named for, is it not? Redemption Creek. A place where people can start over. And you have," Sully said, kissing the top of her head. "You have built a whole new life, Rose. You are not Rose Brennan anymore. You are Rose Sullivan, my wife, Will's mother, a respected member of this community. You have earned that name through your own hard work and character. I have not I?" Rose said, feeling a sense of pride and peace settle over her. I have finally become someone I can be proud of. I have always been proud of you, Sully said softly. They sat together as the sun set, a family united by love and strengthened by the trials they had overcome. Rose looked at her husband, at her son, at the ranch spread out before them, and felt a deep sense of gratitude for every twist and turn that had brought her to this moment. Life continued to unfold with its mixture of joys and challenges. Will grew from a baby into an active, curious toddler who wanted to explore everything. He took his first steps at 11 months, launching himself from the sofa into Sully's waiting arms. He said his first word at 13 months, and of course it was horse, which delighted both his parents. When Will was 2 years old, Rose discovered she was pregnant again. This time, the pregnancy was easier, perhaps because she knew what to expect or perhaps because she was simply healthier and more settled. Their second child, a daughter they named Margaret Ann after Mrs. Henderson and Rose's mother, was born in the summer of 1887. Maggie, as they called her, was a placid baby with her father's green eyes and her mother's dark hair. She was content to be held and cuddled, unlike Will, who had always wanted to be on the move. The two children were different in temperament but devoted to each other from the start. Will was protective of his baby sister, always wanting to help take care of her. The ranch continued to prosper. Sully and Rose expanded their operations, eventually running 200 head of cattle and a small but thriving horse breeding operation. They hired 2 ranch hands to help with the workload, young men from town who were eager to learn the trade. Rose's reputation as a horse trainer continued to grow. People came from as far away as Tucson and Phoenix to buy her horses, and she was able to command good prices for animals known for their quality. She took pride in her work, in building something with her own hands and her own skills. But more than the material success, Rose treasured the life she had built with Sully and their children. Every morning, she woke up beside the man she loved. Every day, she worked alongside him, building their future together. Every evening, they gathered as a family for dinner, sharing stories about their day and making plans for tomorrow. When Will was 5 and Maggie was 3, Rose woke one morning to find Sully already awake, lying on his side and watching her with a soft smile. "What are you thinking about?" she asked sleepily. "I am thinking about how lucky I am," he said. "I am thinking about a dusty afternoon 7 years ago when a woman stumbled into town with nothing but determination and courage. I am thinking about how that one moment changed my entire life." "It changed mine too," Rose said, reaching out to touch his face. "You gave me everything, Sully, a name, a home, a family, a future. You gave me a reason to stop running and start living." "You did that yourself," Sully corrected gently. "I just gave you an opportunity." "You are the one who seized it, who worked hard, who built a reputation, who became the woman you were always meant to be." "We did it together," Rose said. "Everything we have, we built together." "Yes, we did," Sully agreed, pulling her close, "and I would not change a single moment of it." They lay together as sunlight began to filter through the curtains, listening to the sounds of the ranch waking up around them. Somewhere down the hall, they heard Will's voice as he woke up, and then Maggie's delighted giggle in response to something her brother said. "We should get up," Rose said reluctantly. "The children will be wanting breakfast." "Just one more minute," Sully said, tightening his arms around her. "Let me hold my wife for one more minute before the day gets away from us." Rose smiled and nestled closer, breathing in the familiar scent of him. This was happiness, she thought. Not the absence of difficulty, but the presence of love strong enough to weather any storm. As the years passed, Rose and Sully watched their children grow. Will developed his father's love of ranching and his mother's way with horses. By the time he was 10, he was already an accomplished rider and was starting to help with breaking and training the young horses. Maggie, on the other hand, showed an early aptitude for numbers and business. She was always asking questions about prices, costs, and profits, and she seemed to instinctively understand the economics of running a ranch. "She is going to be running this place by the time she is 15, Sully joked one evening as they watched Maggie carefully count out the money from a horse sale, her young face serious with concentration. "She very well might," Rose agreed with pride. In 1892, when Will was 8 and Maggie was 6, Rose and Sully welcomed their third child, another boy they named Daniel Marcus. Rose chose the middle name carefully, a way of honoring her father while also reclaiming that part of her past. She had finally reached a place where she could remember the good in her father without being consumed by anger over his failures. Danny, as he quickly became known, was a happy, easygoing child who seemed to find joy in everything. He loved being outside, loved animals, and loved his older siblings with an intensity that sometimes overwhelmed them. Where Will was serious and focused, and Maggie was practical and organized, Danny was playful and spontaneous. "He is the best parts of both of us," Sully said one day, watching Danny chase chickens around the yard while laughing with abandon. "Your joy and my optimism." "He is pretty perfect," Rose agreed. Life was not without its challenges. There were droughts that tested the limits of their water supply. There were harsh winters that took a toll on the cattle. There were years when prices were low and money was tight. But Rose and Sully faced each challenge together, supporting each other through the difficult times and celebrating together during the good times. The community of Redemption Creek grew and prospered around them. New families moved in, new businesses opened, and the town became less of an outpost and more of a proper community. Rose became increasingly involved in civic activities, helping to establish a school and serving on the church committee. She used her own story, carefully edited, to encourage other women who found themselves in difficult circumstances, offering them work, advice, or just a sympathetic ear. Mrs. Henderson, who had become like a mother to Rose, passed away peacefully in her sleep in 1895. Rose grieved deeply for the woman who had shown her such kindness and acceptance. At the funeral, Rose stood and spoke about what Mrs. Henderson had meant to her. "She taught me that family is not just about blood," Rose said, her voice thick with emotion. "It is about the people who choose to love you, who stand by you, who help you become the person you are meant to be. She was my family in every way that mattered, and I will miss her every day for the rest of my life." After the funeral, several women approached Rose to thank her for her words and to share their own stories of how Mrs. Henderson had helped them. Rose realized that she was not the only person who had been touched by that generous woman's kindness, and it comforted her to know that Mrs. Henderson's legacy would live on through all the lives she had changed. In 1898, when Rose was 35 years old and Sully was 37, they celebrated their 15th wedding anniversary. Their children, now ranging from Will at 16 to Danny at 6, planned a surprise party with the help of Tom Chen and other friends in town. When Rose and Sully arrived at what they thought was a regular church social, they were greeted instead by a room full of friends and neighbors, all gathered to celebrate their marriage. There was food, music, and dancing. Person after person stood up to toast the couple, talking about their love, their hard work, and their contributions to the community. Sheriff Dalton, now retired but still spry at 72, gave a toast that brought tears to many eyes. "15 years ago," he said, "I watched a young woman marry a young man in this very church. I remember thinking they had that special something, that spark that separates a good marriage from a great one. I am pleased to say that time has proven me right." Sully and Rose Sullivan are proof that with love, hard work, and commitment, anything is possible. They have built a life together that is a testament to the very best of what marriage can be. Here is to 15 more years and then 15 more after that. "Hear, hear," the crowd chorused. Later that night, after the party had ended and the children were in bed, Rose and Sully sat together on their porch, looking up at the stars. "Do you ever think about what your life would have been like if you had not come to Redemption Creek that day?" Sully asked. "Sometimes," Rose admitted. but not with regret. Everything I went through, every difficult moment, every fear, every shame, it all led me here. To you, to our children, to this life, I would not change any of it. Even the hard parts, Sully asked. Especially the hard parts, Rose said. Because they taught me what really matters. They taught me who I really am, and they brought me to you. Sully pulled her close, and they sat in comfortable silence, watching the stars wheel slowly overhead. After a while, Sully spoke again. Do you remember what I said to you that first day? When you told me your last name carried only shame, you said I should take your name and start fresh, Rose said. I remember every word of that conversation. I am glad you took my advice, Sully said with a smile. Otherwise, I would have had to work much harder to convince you to marry me. Rose laughed. I do not think it would have taken much convincing. I was already half in love with you by the end of that first day. Only half, Sully teased. All right, maybe more than half, Rose conceded. You were too good to resist. I am still too good to resist, Sully said, pulling her closer and kissing her. Rose kissed him back, still feeling that same spark she had felt when they first kissed 7 years ago in the stable. Some things never changed, and her love for this man was one of them. As the years continued to pass, Rose and Sully watched their children grow into adults. Will, serious and hardworking, took on more and more responsibility at the ranch. By the time he was 20, he was essentially running the cattle operation while Sully focused on the horses. He fell in love with a young woman named Sarah who worked at the general store. And in 1902, they were married in the same church where Rose and Sully had exchanged vows 19 years earlier. Rose cried happy tears as she watched her son pledge his life to Sarah, remembering her own wedding day and how far she had come since then. She was no longer the frightened, shame-laden woman who had arrived in Redemption Creek with nothing. She was a wife, a mother, a successful businesswoman, and a respected member of the community. She had truly become Rose Sullivan in every sense of the word. Maggie, true to her early promise, showed a brilliant mind for business. She attended a women's college in California, one of the few available at the time, and came back full of ideas for how to expand and modernize their ranch operations. She suggested they start advertising their horses in newspapers in bigger cities, that they attend livestock shows to showcase their animals, that they keep more detailed records of breeding and sales. She is going to revolutionize this whole operation, Sully said proudly after listening to Maggie present a comprehensive business plan for the ranch. She already has, Rose said, looking at the detailed charts and projections her daughter had created. Danny, meanwhile, surprised everyone by developing a passion for veterinary medicine. He had always loved animals, but as he got older, he became fascinated by their health and well-being. With his parents' support, he went away to study veterinary science, one of the first in the family to pursue higher education. We have done well, Sully said one evening in 1905 as they sat together on their porch, now weathered and comfortable with age. Our children are happy and successful, the ranch is thriving, and we are still here, still together. We have done very well, Rose agreed. She was 42 now, her dark hair threaded with silver, her face lined from years in the sun. But she had never felt more beautiful, more confident, more at peace with who she was. Do you have any regrets? Sully asked. Rose thought about that seriously. Did she regret the years of shame and running? Did she regret the loss of her father and the pain he had caused? Did she regret the hard times, the struggles, the challenges? No, she said finally. I do not have any regrets. Every experience, good and bad, made me who I am, and I like who I am. I love my life, I love my family, and I love you more than I can express. The feeling is mutual, Sully said, taking her hand. You know, I used to think I was doing you a favor that day I offered you my name, but I realize now that you did me the favor. You made my life complete, Rose. You gave me purpose and joy and a family I never thought I would have. I am the lucky one. We are both lucky, Rose said. We found each other. In 1908, Rose and Sully celebrated their 25th wedding anniversary, Their 3 children and Will's wife Sarah threw them a massive celebration that drew people from all over Arizona territory. The ranch had become something of a landmark, known for quality livestock and fair dealing. The Sullivan name meant something in ranching circles, something good and honorable. As Rose looked around at the gathering, at the life she and Sully had built, at the family they had raised, at the community they had helped create, she felt overwhelming gratitude. She thought about that desperate woman who had stumbled into Redemption Creek 26 years earlier, exhausted and afraid, carrying a name that meant only shame. That woman was gone now, transformed into someone strong and capable and loved. Rose Sullivan was real, not just a name she had borrowed, but an identity she had earned through years of hard work, integrity, and love. Later that night, after all the guests had gone home and the house was quiet, Rose and Sully walked down to Redemption Creek, the waterway that had given the town its name. The moon was full, reflecting off the gently moving water, and the desert night was cool and peaceful. "Do you remember when Sheriff Dalton told me the story of how this town got its name?" Rose asked as they stood on the bank of the creek. "I do," Sully said. "He said the settlers were dying of thirst and this creek saved their lives. That they named it Redemption Creek because the water redeemed them from death." "That is what this place did for me," Rose said quietly. "It redeemed me, not just from my past, but from who I thought I was, from the shame I carried. This town, this creek, and you, Sully, you all gave me a second chance at life. You redeemed yourself," Sully said firmly. "I just gave you an opportunity. You did all the real work." "We did it together," Rose insisted. "Everything we have, everything we are, we built it together." Sully pulled her into his arms and they stood there by the creek, holding each other under the stars. They had been married for 25 years, had weathered storms and celebrated triumphs, had raised children and built a legacy. And through it all, their love had only grown stronger. "I love you, Rose Sullivan," Sully said. "I love you too, James Sullivan," Rose replied. "Thank you for giving me your name. Thank you for giving me a fresh start. Thank you for giving me everything." "You gave me everything too," Sully said. "A life worth living, a family to cherish, love that has sustained me through everything. We saved each other, Rose." "Yes, we did," Rose agreed. They stood there for a long time, listening to the gentle sound of water flowing over rocks, the same water that had saved the first settlers, the same creek that had given this place its hopeful name. Redemption Creek had lived up to its promise, offering second chances to all who needed them. And Rose Sullivan, formerly Rose Brennan, had seized that second chance with both hands and had built something beautiful from it. As they walked back to their house, hand in hand under the stars, Rose felt complete peace. She had found her place in the world, had made a name for herself that carried no shame, only honor. She had found love, built a family, and created a legacy that would endure long after she was gone. The woman who had once carried only shame had been transformed into a woman who carried pride, love, and joy. And all of it had started with a simple act of kindness from a cowboy who had offered her his name and a chance to start fresh. She had taken that chance, and it had made all the difference. Years continued to unfold, bringing with them the natural progression of life. Will and Sarah welcomed 3 children of their own, making Rose and Sully proud grandparents. Maggie eventually married a businessman from Phoenix who shared her sharp mind and her passion for innovation. They worked together to further expand the Sullivan Ranch operations, making it one of the most successful and well-known ranches in Arizona. Danny completed his veterinary training and returned to Redemption Creek to set up a practice, becoming the first formally trained veterinarian in the region. In 1912, Arizona finally achieved statehood, and the Sullivan family celebrated along with the rest of the territory. They had been part of Arizona's history, had grown along with it, and now they would be part of its future as a state. Rose and Sully were now in their 50s, their children grown, their grandchildren bringing new energy and joy into their lives. The ranch ran smoothly, managed mostly by Will now, though Sully still spent his days working with horses and cattle, unable to fully retire from the work he loved. One evening in late autumn, as the desert air cooled and the sky blazed with the colors of sunset, Rose and Sully sat on their porch as they had done countless times before. But this time felt different, felt significant somehow. "What are you thinking about?" Rose asked, noticing the contemplative expression on Sully's face. "I am thinking about time," Sully said. "About how fast it goes by. It seems like just yesterday you walked into Redemption Creek and now we have grandchildren. We have lived an entire life together." "A good life," Rose said. "The best life," Sully agreed. "Rose, I need you to know something. If I could go back and live my life over, I would not change a single thing. Every decision I made, every path I took led me to you, and you were worth it all." "I feel the same way," Rose said, her voice thick with emotion. "You gave me everything I never thought I could have. You saw past my shame and my fear and loved me anyway. You gave me a name I could be proud of, a life worth living, a love that has sustained me through everything." "You did the same for me," Sully said. "Before you, I was just existing, going through the motions. You gave my life meaning and purpose. You made me want to be a better man." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching as the sun dipped below the horizon and the first stars began to appear. "Sully," Rose said softly, "do you remember what you said to me that very first day? You told me to take your name and start fresh." "I remember," Sully said. "Those might have been the most important words anyone has ever said to me," Rose said. "They changed everything. They gave me hope when I had none. They showed me that my past did not have to define my future." "I am glad I said them," Sully said. "Though I will admit I did not fully understand what I was offering at the time, I just knew you needed help and I wanted to provide it." "It was more than help," Rose said. "It was salvation. It was grace. It was love, even though neither of us knew it yet." "I think I knew it," Sully admitted. "I think some part of me recognized you as mine from that very first moment. I just did not want to admit it to myself yet." Rose reached out and took his hand, feeling the familiar calluses and strength. This hand had caught her when she fell, had held her through labor, had worked beside her for 30 years. This hand had built their life together. "I would have been lost without you," she said. "And I would have been incomplete without you," Sully replied. As the stars filled the sky and the desert night settled around them, Rose reflected on the incredible journey of her life. She had started as Rose Brennan, a woman carrying a name associated with shame and failure. Through circumstances that had seemed tragic at the time, she had been forced to leave everything behind and start over. But that ending had been a beginning. She had become Rose Sullivan, and in doing so, had discovered who she truly was. She had learned that she was strong, capable, and worthy of love. She had built a reputation based on her own character and skills. She had raised children who were happy and successful. She had loved and been loved by a good man for 30 years. The Sullivan name meant something now, something positive. When people heard it, they thought of quality horses, fair dealing, hard work, and integrity. They thought of a family that contributed to the community and helped those in need. They thought of Rose Sullivan, the woman who could train any horse and who always had wise advice for young women starting out. No one remembered Rose Brennan anymore. That woman, with her shame and her fear, had been left behind long ago. In her place stood someone stronger, someone better. Someone who had earned every bit of respect and love she received. "Thank you," Rose said suddenly. "For what?" Sully asked. "For seeing who I could become when I could only see who I had been," Rose said. "For believing in me when I did not believe in myself. For loving me even when I did not think I deserved to be loved." "You always deserved to be loved," Sully said firmly. "You just needed someone to show you that. I am honored that I got to be that person." "You did not just show me," Rose said. "You taught me to love myself. You taught me that my worth was not determined by my father's failures or society's judgment. You taught me that I could define myself." "You taught me plenty too," Sully said. You taught me that kindness is never wasted, that second chances matter, that love can heal even the deepest wounds. You made me a better person, Rose." As they sat there in the darkness, two people who had found each other against all odds and had built a life that exceeded their wildest dreams, Rose felt a sense of completion. Her story, which had started in shame and fear, had become a story of redemption and love. Redemption Creek had lived up to its name, offering her the second chance she so desperately needed. And Sully had been the instrument of that redemption, offering her his name, his home, his heart. She had taken all of it and had built something beautiful. She had become Rose Sullivan in every sense of the word, and that name now carried pride, respect, and love. Years later, when Rose was in her 70s and Sully was 75, they celebrated their 50th wedding anniversary surrounded by 3 children, 7 grandchildren, and 4 great-grandchildren. The Sullivan Ranch was now a family operation, spanning generations, a testament to the legacy Rose and Sully had built together. At the celebration, Will stood up to make a toast. He was 50 now, his own hair graying, his own children grown. "My parents," he said, his voice carrying across the gathered crowd, "taught me everything I know about hard work, integrity, and love. They built this ranch from almost nothing, and more importantly, they built a family based on respect and devotion. They showed all of us what a true partnership looks like, what real love means. They have been married for 50 years, and they still look at each other the way they did on their wedding day. That is the kind of love I aspire to, the kind of marriage I hope to emulate." To Sully and Rose Sullivan, the best parents anyone could ask for. Everyone raised their glasses, and Rose felt tears streaming down her face. She looked at Sully, whose own eyes were wet, and saw in his face the same love he had shown her 50 years ago when he had promised to love and honor her for the rest of their lives. He had kept that promise. Through good times and bad, through prosperity and hardship, through the everyday challenges of life, he had loved her. And she had loved him right back with everything she had. "We did it," Sully whispered to her as the party continued around them. "We built a good life, Rose. We raised good children, we contributed to a good community, and we loved each other well. We did everything right." "We did," Rose agreed, "and I would not change a single moment of it." As the celebration wound down and their family members began to head home, promising to visit soon, Rose and Sully found themselves alone on their porch once more. It was the same porch where they had sat countless times over the decades, talking, planning, dreaming, and simply being together. 50 years, Sully mused. "That is a long time." "It is," Rose agreed, "but somehow it feels like it went by in a blink." "Do you remember our wedding day?" Sully asked. "Every detail," Rose said. "I remember the cream-colored dress Mrs. Henderson made for me. I remember how nervous I was. I remember looking at you and thinking I was the luckiest woman alive." "I was thinking the same thing," Sully said, "that I was the luckiest man alive to be marrying you. We were both right," Rose said with a smile. They sat in comfortable silence, holding hands as they had done for 50 years. The desert stretched out before them, beautiful and harsh and filled with memories. This land had tested them, shaped them, and ultimately embraced them. "Rose," Sully said after a while, "I need to say something." "What is it?" Rose asked, turning to look at him. "I know we have been together for 50 years, and I have told you I love you more times than I can count," Sully said. "But I do not think I say it enough. I do not think I can ever say it enough. I love you, Rose Sullivan. I love you more today than I did yesterday, and I will love you even more tomorrow. You are the best thing that ever happened to me, and I will love you until my last breath and beyond." Rose felt fresh tears spring to her eyes. After 50 years of marriage, this man could still make her cry with his declarations of love. "I love you too, Sully," she said. "You saved my life in more ways than one. You gave me a reason to stop running and start living. You showed me what love really means. You made me believe in myself. I love you more than words can express." They kissed then, a soft, sweet kiss full of decades of love and devotion. And as they sat there under the stars, Rose thought about the incredible journey that had brought them to this moment. She had walked into Redemption Creek 51 years ago carrying nothing but shame and fear. She had told a stranger that her last name carried only shame, never imagining what would happen next. And that stranger, that kind cowboy with green eyes and a generous heart, had told her to take his name and start fresh. She had taken that name. She had taken that chance, and it had changed everything. Rose Sullivan had become more than just a name she borrowed. It had become who she truly was. She had earned that name through years of hard work, integrity, and love. She had built a life, raised a family, and created a legacy that would endure long after she was gone, and through it all, Sully had been by her side, her partner, her love, her best friend. Together, they had proven that second chances were real, that redemption was possible, that love could conquer even the deepest shame. As the night deepened and the stars wheeled overhead, Rose and Sully sat together on their porch, two people who had found each other against all odds and had made the most of every single day they had been given. They had built a good life. They had loved well. And in a town called Redemption Creek, they had found exactly what they were looking for: a fresh start, a second chance, and a love that would last forever. The Sullivan name, once freely given, had been earned 1,000 times over. And Rose Brennan, who had once carried only shame, had become Rose Sullivan, a woman who carried love, pride, and joy in her heart every single day. That was the true meaning of redemption. Not escaping the past, but transforming it into something beautiful. Not hiding from who you were, but becoming who you were meant to be. Not running from shame, but walking toward love. Rose had done all of that and more. And as she sat there with Sully's hand in hers, she knew with absolute certainty that she had lived a life worth living, had loved a man worth loving, and had earned a name worth carrying. She was Rose Sullivan, and she always would be. The end had become a beginning. The shame had become pride. The fear had become love. And the woman who had stumbled into Redemption Creek with nothing had built everything she ever needed right here, in this place, with this man, in this life they had created together. It was, in every sense of the word, a happy ending. But more than that, it was a well-earned ending, a satisfying ending, an ending that honored everything Rose and Sully had fought for and worked for over 50 years of marriage. They had started with nothing but a name freely given and a chance courageously taken. They had ended with everything that truly mattered: love, family, respect, and a life well lived, and in the end that was more than enough. It was everything.